Thank you, Roberta and the team here. It is such an honor to be so welcomed, to walk together and to learn together and co-create during these last 3 days. I've just been so blessed. I'd like to start this presentation with a quick video just to describe a little bit of our context. As she mentioned, I live and work in Beira, Mozambique, and I just wanted you to get a sense of the sights and the sounds. Unfortunately, I can't bring the smells, but I also wanted to introduce you to a young man that really drew me to this topic. His name is Ibraimo, and so get a chance to hear his voice, to see him, and to hear a bit of his story. He's someone I've mentored for the last 5 years, and he's someone I consider a son in the ministry. So let's start with the video. Christianity is now one of the 2 most widely practiced religions in Africa. Almost half of the African population is Christian. This emerging trend has shifted Christianity's center from European industrialized nations to the global south. According to Amos Yong, Africans are ill-equipped and under-resourced to be the voice of Christianity worldwide, a voice that is increasingly comprised of poor urban youth. Bem-vindo, welcome to Beira, a port city in the central region of Mozambique, which boasts a population of just over 500,000 people. With a population growth of 3.5% per year and an urbanization rate of 3.4%, the demographic landscape of Mozambique is shifting rapidly, resulting in a proliferation of slums, urban poverty, and rising inequality. 45% of Mozambique's population is under age 14, and life expectancy is around 45 years of age. The average woman has 6 children. One of the poorest countries in the world, Mozambique's labor force is growing at a rate of 500,000 per year, and the average income is less than $100 per month. What does it mean to mission in this context? How do we reach the future voice of the church? Hip-hop has become arguably one of the most relevant cultural forms of expression for African youth, and as such, must be explored in order to understand music and youth in the multi-faith cities of Africa. Meet Ibraimo, a Christian rapper in Beira.
Eu sou Nelly Brain, meu nome formal é Manuel Ibraimo Antônio, sou moçambicano, sou rapista cristão.
Through Ibraimo's life and art, we learn about multi-faith dialogue, urban migration, education, and globalization, powerfully illustrating broader missiological concerns.
Os meus pais são do norte de Moçambique, eles são muçulmanos, nós somos de proveniência, origem árabe. Saio de casa aos 13 anos de idade para um colégio interno e foi onde eu comecei a conhecer a música. Depois eu venho para Beira para estudar e na sala de aulas é onde eu comecei a ter o interesse em conhecer Jesus Cristo. Encontrei na música alguém que me ouvisse e alguém que me ensinasse a pensar sobre os meus pensamentos. Pela sua característica, o rap é um estilo de música que há liberdade, não há muitas regras sobre o que tu expressas. O rapista tem autonomia, ele fala o que pensa, fala o que acredita. As nossas igrejas não têm, a maior parte delas, uma estrutura talvez teológica com fundamentos que possam enfrentar alguém que venha com suas opiniões. Então eu penso que é uma ameaça. Então por isso que a maior parte das igrejas sente um bocadinho de receio em receber o estilo de música rap. Quando alguém fala de igreja, para nós jovens, nós pensamos uma coisa muito conservadora. Por causa dessa parte conservadora, logo que o jovem, qualquer jovem vai para a igreja, a primeira coisa que o jovem vê não é o amor, não é a recepção, mas são as regras. Nós devíamos trabalhar mais em criar meios atrativos para que o jovem perceba a igreja como um meio onde ele vai ter ajuda para ter essa liberdade, mas que não seja uma liberdade que lhe prejudique. Eu sou um testemunho. Posso ser usado por Cristo, sim, como uma ferramenta comum. Podemos ganhar o mundo até usando o rap.
The enormous demographic change of Christianity worldwide and the globalization of missions highlights the need to reconfigure how mission is done. Crate digging through culture, hip-hop and mission in pluralistic Southern Africa will address how arts are currently being engaged in local church contexts in relation to witness, worship, and discipleship, and provoke key considerations for culturally appropriate communication and critical contextualization of the gospel.
Amen. That's my son. Over the weekend of May 26th, just this year, 10 people were decapitated by young Islamist militants in Palma, a sleepy town in a dominantly Muslim area of northern Mozambique. Now, the shocking event was one of a series of ongoing attacks, fueled by a mix of poverty and corruption. Now, due to its location on the Indian Ocean, Mozambique has participated in the global marketplace for centuries, enduring opportunistic Muslim traders, oppressive Portuguese sailors, and their respective religions. So what precipitated such violence in an area known until recently for its beaches? Palma is located in the poorest province in Mozambique. But over the course of a few decades, however, it's become the hub of illegal trade, earning the region a reputation of the place that will make Mozambique rich. Unfortunately, locals are just not reaping the benefits. So frustrated by a lack of jobs, marginalized and uneducated youth with surprising links to national and international contraband, military training, religious leaders, and financial support are at the core of these al-Shabaab-style attacks. Now, while researchers have varied views on the insurgency, all agree that underemployed youth searching for a means of a better life are at the heart of the issue. Andrew Walls contends that Africa may be the theater in which some of the determinative new directions in Christian thought and activity are being taken. Now, when one looks at Christianity's explosive increase on the continent and the concomitant reduction in a post-Christian West, it's quite easy to agree Africa is indeed a major theater of Christianity today. Yet, if we're to extend this metaphor a bit, who are the actors and what are their actions? And how are they enabled or constrained by their current stage? So today I'd like to describe just a facet of the African Christian theater by exploring a specific actor, Ibraimo, and his performative actions localized on the stage of Beira, Mozambique. My goal today is to help us understand his lived and told stories as expressed through his lyrics and to discover how Mozambican Christian youth are making sense of the world around them. Okay, I'll begin with Ibraimo's stage, and then I'm going to describe him as an actor and his actions, and then just conclude with some missiological implications drawn from hip-hop sensibilities. If all the world's a stage, as Shakespeare tells us, what does Ibraimo's stage look like? Africa is increasingly urban, and the tsunami of globalization has long crashed on the continent's shores. Contrary to dominant Western stereotypes of Africa, rural populations are streaming into African megacities faster than in almost any other part of the world. If the traditional vision of Africa is windswept savanna or quiet forest, the new one is of urban jungle. Allow me to briefly highlight two theoretical frameworks undergirding my research, that of culture change and popular music studies, and then to describe the stage on which Ibraimo acts, a cultural platform with specific political, generational, and causal constraints. Now, globalization has radically altered the world, hybridizing cultures and accelerating culture change. Globalization is not just changing the world, it's changing us and the way that we view the world. Of course, urbanization is a major contributing factor in heightening and broadening the experience of the global economy, facilitating culture change at a dizzying pace, indeed. This picture here was sent to me by a friend, and these are body sprays, okay? We've got blue Facebook, red YouTube, black iPhone 6, and a WhatsApp. Now, this was sent to me by someone who lives and works in not in Mozambique, in Ivory Coast, and she found it on her local pharmacy shelf. So it's a clear example of globalization's impact on the continent, and it's anybody's guess as to what Facebook actually smells like. Now, three paradigms dominate the literature for interpreting globalization's impact on culture: homogenization, heterogenization, and hybridization. I don't have time to go into those, but for more information, I highly recommend Brian Meyers' book on the subject, Engaging Globalization. Now, though each paradigm has merit, many observers now believe that both homogenization and heterogenization are just too problematic. In fact, even hybridization is really too simplistic to describe the effects of globalization on culture. Globalization and its effects are experienced in diverse and uneven ways, which means that no single model will be adequate, but rather each cultural context needs to be studied and understood on its own terms. People are participating in different realities at the same time. There are multiple modes of belonging. Nowhere is this more illustrated than in global pop culture and the consumption and commodification of music. In fact, one could argue that nothing better exemplifies this new world and the changes in it than music, for the very kind of malleability of music makes possible local appropriations and alterations, resulting in all kinds of syncretisms and hybridities. Think jazz, right? Yeah. The internationalization of rap music is one of the most important recent developments in contemporary pop culture, yet it ironically promotes a simultaneous feeling of global disconnect. New actors on the global stage are keenly aware of their marginalization and subjugation to powerful global constraints, and attempts to fashion oneself as a transnational subject exact a certain price. Popular culture practices both permit and limit people to relate to each other and the broader world. Now, rap and the larger hip-hop culture are but the latest in a long line of foreign music imports in Africa, each carrying within them the larger musical systems in which they are embedded. Many elements of hip-hop are attributed to having originated in Africa. Rap music, you could say, is a diasporic genre at home in Africa, but also a genre having many homes. African rap music is composed with a sense of double consciousness, reflecting both roots and routes. Now, the first generation of African hip-hop artists relied heavily on imitation of their American counterparts. However, the genre quickly became indigenized and politicized. And as African rap developed second and third generation hip-hoppers, critical and commercial voices emerged. One widespread effect has been to rekindle interest in older local traditions. African youth continually search for ways to make rap relevant and unique, which often means digging through local culture, almost like American DJs crate dig or search through crates of obscure vinyl record albums for new sounds, hence the title of my presentation, Crate Digging Through Culture. Hip-hop's emergence in Africa and the variety of creative expression across the continent is tied to specific cultural, social, and political realities on the ground. It's not surprising that hip-hop arrived in Africa in the 80s and 90s, concurrent with important political and economic changes. Similar to the conditions that gave rise to hip-hop in the United States, rising poverty and increased migratory flows to urban areas greatly impacted African youth. Seeking an outlet for the frustrations caused by unemployment, crime, and poverty in overcrowded cities, many turned to hip-hop, identifying with the lived and told stories of African American youth. Now, in addition to the challenges of being simultaneously exposed to and excluded from global wealth, African youth are minimized by the surrounding authoritarian society in which power and influence accrue with age. Stuck in between childhood and adulthood, the prevailing state for youth in sub-Saharan Africa is WAIT, waithood. It's important to note here that Africa is young. really young. The median age in sub-Saharan Africa is 19. Just to give you a point of comparison, in the US, it's 38. Okay? If you take a look at the slide here, green represents a median age in the teens, yellow in the 20s, and we have one small country of Tunisia with a median age of 31. 70% of sub-Saharan Africa's population is less than 30 years old. It's the highest proportion in the world. Finally, a persistent traditional cosmology of evil and evident cultural value throughout sub-Saharan Africa hinders youth initiative. Now, what do I mean by that? See, the power to help or harm lies beyond the self. It's externalized, and this limits agency. It's a fatalistic society. It's reactive rather than proactive. And this is a culture game. We all have them, but it profoundly restricts youth activities. So within this double constraint of youth identity and fatalistic agency, it's perhaps easier for us to understand that it's not necessarily the deep historical or musical connections that caused African youth to embrace American rap. Roots and routes aside, rap's most attractive quality in Africa is that it's a youth music, and it validates a youthful voice in the public sphere. Now, having described the stage upon which African hip-hop emerged, I now move to describe Ibraimo, an actor, exploring how the arc of development as an artist follows his personal pilgrimage. His life and lyrics can be subdivided into three distinct phases: musical beginnings, growing up, and maturing in ministry. Manuel Ibraimo Antonio was born in 1989 in Nampula, a region dominated by Islam. He's the firstborn son of a multi-faith, multicultural, dashes included family in a matrilineal society. His father is Makua and nominally Muslim, while his mother was Koti and a member of an African-initiated church called the 12 Apostles. However, when they married, Ibraimo's mother acceded to the faith of her husband, which is a typical practice throughout Mozambique. Ibraimo's early years were characterized by change and loss. His mother died when he was just 6, and his father's professional development involved 6 moves and 2 additional stepmothers by the time Ibraimo was 13. So his decision to leave the house to study at boarding school is really not surprising. And it was during his 3 years at school that his natural artistic proclivities began to blossom. He was shy, but wanted to express his feelings of isolation and loneliness initiated by his mother's death and then heightened by the resultant transitions. Similar to other songs written in the early years of his musical career, Meu Teu Retrato, or My Portrait, was a form of introspective therapy. The first verse reflects his pain, and I'll read you the translation. Could it be that the destination I'm seeking is darker than I thought? The road that I'm on is more narrow than I thought. The life that I live is worse than I thought. Can someone give me a hand to end my suffering? Ibraimo initiated his rap career by watching American rap music videos. And although he couldn't speak English, by the way, the national language in Mozambique is Portuguese, he was especially drawn to Game and T.I. These are both American rappers, for those who don't know. By the following year, Ibraimo started imitating Mozambican rappers in Portuguese, covering their songs at cultural art shows, while writing his own lyrics and experimenting with creating backtracks. And then in 2005, he sang his first song solo in a show. The next year, in 2006, Ibraimo moved to Beira, for further education. Now, Beira was the place where Ibraimo thrived academically, musically, and spiritually. Now, though he was a self-professing Catholic in the sense that he wasn't Muslim like his family, he really wasn't interested in his spiritual development. However, in the middle of class, his professor alleged, many people are just defuntus ambulantes, or walking dead. Ibraimo revealed, this made me so curious. I approached him after class, and he said that I needed to accept Jesus Christ as Savior and Lord. Ibraimo started regularly going to his professor's home for Bible study and was baptized a few months later. He continued to write and record songs, volunteering in a home studio so he could learn how to produce, mix, and record. My life was studio, school, church. It was crazy, he recounts. During this time, he also attended a worship training course and created a rap group made of youth that lived in the same neighborhood. Grandi, or grown-up, best describes his social and musical aspirations at this time. The translation reads, "In a community, the boys want to be like the ones that represent nearby celebrities. This is the life. Every guy wants to be a man of the plaza. I can dream of being Afonso, but never Obama. Feet on the ground, this goes for my hands that dream high. For those who dream of becoming the hood reps, the next Eusebius and Lourdes Mutola. 2 seconds of silence for those who dream now. I just want to be something and show society that I'm already useful for others." 2 things I need to mention here before I move on. You'll see there's some bold text there in English. English borrowed phrases is typical practice for rappers across sub-Saharan Africa. He also mentions, I think we're all familiar with who Obama is, right? But he mentions a couple other celebrities that you may not be familiar with. Afonso is a recently deceased political leader. Eusebius was a Mozambican soccer player that played for Portugal, and Lourdes Mutola was an Olympian that ran the 800 meters. Now, worried about how to explain increased ministry responsibility to a Muslim family, Ibraimo took the opportunity to step away from his church when it moved to a different location. Instead, he began attending Familia Vitoriosa church services on a regular basis when he entered university as an engineering student. And that's when I met Ibraimo. Now, this current season of Ibraimo's life has been one of maturing as a Christian leader, discovering his ministry calling and discipling others. He uses his rap groups as a training ground for young artists, providing a sense of community for the participants. Most of the members see him as an older brother, coming to him for advice about various life issues. Now, many Mozambicans assume that secular musicians live illicit lifestyles, and in some cases this is true. However, as Ibraimo says, it's possible to be a good artist and avoid these negative things. We're normal people. In fact, he believes it is his good reputation rather than the music itself that has gained him such credibility in both the Christian and secular communities. Deus da minha vida, or God of my life, demonstrates a dramatic shift in Ibraimo's priorities. Rather than wanting to be a man of the plaza, Ibraimo submits to the Lord's direction. Part of the chorus states, "God of my life, stay with me. I'm your house. Live in me. God, I tell you what I need, Dad. I need the Lord." I'd like us to just listen in the first verse and the chorus. This is a collaborative effort between a Brazilian artist and Ibraimo. Ibraimo's the rapper, and he's talking in the first verse about his identity in Christ. If you're interested in his music, I do have a few CDs available. First come, first serve. Please talk to me about how you can help me in supporting, encouraging, and stewarding this young artist and Christian. Now, in 2014, Ibraimo's ministry calling solidified through an initiative called Pregação na Comunidade, or preaching in the community through rap. He also launched Concerto Gilead, an ongoing open mic Christian concert at Familia Vitoriosa Church that draws youth from across the city. The purpose of the concert is to provide a place to perform, restoring the faith of artists who may have been rejected in their own churches, as well as a place for secular artists to be evangelized. Now, though he had an opportunity to leave for a lucrative job a few years ago, Ibraimo has remained in Beira, continuing his mission to create Christian rap, disciple artists, and witness among secular rappers. In his own words, "I'm an artist and a Christian. What is my responsibility? To be a light, to show people what God's done in my life through my music, to shine the values, the transformation, the liberty from sin, and to show God's love to my neighbors." I wish all musicians had that vision. Well, there are a number of key themes that emerge from Ibraimo's lived and told experiences. We can see through his life and lyrics that his music is not only descriptive, but proscriptive. His identity is asserted through music. Though still a youth by Mozambican standards, situated in a passive cultural context, Ibraimo has demonstrated incredible agency through his musical practices and performance. Let's look at identity. Now, identity is best illustrated through language and style. Ibraimo raps in street Portuguese with English borrowed phrases, as I mentioned. By using both languages, he demonstrates a global and local identity. His backtracks consist of beats that could come from anywhere, though he is starting to experiment rapping over local music styles. Ibraimo wears Western clothing, projecting a cosmopolitan image and a connection to Black consciousness. Agency is demonstrated in the rap genre itself. Ibraimo appreciates the flexibility to borrow from multiple cultural contexts. In fact, the idiom of hip-hop provides an elastic poetic structure within which he can elaborate, both socially and musically. Hip-hop sensibilities affirm Ibraimo's desire to be someone and show society that I'm already useful for others. They give him a voice in a public arena that largely discredits youthful messages. Let's move to missiological concerns. I recently sent out a questionnaire about youth perceptions to missionaries in Africa, just to see how my personal experiences compared to other contexts on the continent. Responses to the questions, how are youth viewed in your context, and how do youth self-identify, were overwhelmingly negative, though a few confounding descriptors like future and next generation were also given. Ambiguity seems like an apt summary word to describe perceptions of youth across Africa. Now, according to the survey, ranked concerns for African youth are lack of economic opportunities, limited educational options, anxieties about social advancement, and finally, frustrations at home. When asked, what is the church doing to reach youth? Most stated, not much. This is concerning. Why is it that over a third of the churches surveyed are not doing much to reach the majority of the population? I contend that we must step up to the challenge of reaching youth and address the generational gap that plagues the African church, and dare I say the American church too. What happens to these youth matters. Mischief and misfortune often occupy the space left behind by a lack of work and structure. With millions of Africans stalling in the march from youth to adulthood, figuring out how to harness their potential energy is the most urgent missiological task of the next decade in Africa. In the face of an increasingly flattening and shrinking world, what does it mean to reach and raise urban youth in Southern Africa? One obvious place to start is to engage the most relevant cultural form of expression for African youth. In this case, it's hip-hop. In so doing, we connect with them. Here I offer a few key considerations drawn from my research on African hip-hop and the values therein. Authenticity. It's being true to who you are. To be authentic is to have integrity. Rappers place a high priority on keeping it real, proclaiming truth that speaks into a given locality. Now, striking a balance between local authenticity and global citizenship is an important concern, not just for African youth, but for an increasing number of people with multiple homes and identities, right, Sunita? Solidarity, and its identification with the story of another. It's an additional value in rap music. Capital gained from shared history, imagined or inferred, is important currency. Listening together to lived and told stories coalesces participants into a shared experience of communitas, an identity that can be transformed into action. Hospitality, it's a sense of welcome, a place of belonging. It's what youth feel the lack of when they approach churches. Concerto Gilead, however, is a creative example of a safe space within a church where youth can perform and process relevant life issues. It's clear that if African churches do not open their arms and embrace the future of their faith, youth will find alternate spaces for support. Mutuality, it's where we learn from each other. Many rap songs are didactic in nature, and artists then take on the role of educators, raising youth consciousness in performances. Rap provides a platform for processing societal problems where youth can learn and grow. What can we learn from hip-hop's global popularity that can be applied to missiological initiatives? The success of rap throughout Southern Africa attests to the fact that hip-hop addresses both local and national issues while drawing on distinctly contextual traits. In other words, somehow hip-hop has managed to apply comprehensive, complementary, and perhaps even creative contextualization. Can missiologists take a page from hip-hop, a cultural movement described as, quote, the global spread of the culture being true to the local? Appropriating, integrating, and transforming a foreign art form into a locally meaningful genre is nothing new for Africans, and African hip-hop provides a rich laboratory in which to view processes of culture change in real time. In this laboratory, 3 paths to reach and raise the future voice of the church are clear. 1, giving youth relevant experience through practical training. 2, reaching youth through more creative channels. And 3, encouraging a spirit of responsibility in future leaders. Yes, African churches are ill-equipped, under-resourced, and many are hesitant to reach and raise youth. Yet, coherent ministry strategies and commitment to youth can challenge ecclesial stagnation and fill the void of waithood. It is time for African youth to be the voice of positive change and social healing in their communities. The ongoing conflict in northern Mozambique attests to the fact that youth are increasingly restive and pressing for solutions to persistent problems of poverty and corruption. The day that I left Mozambique to fly here, I heard about 2 more decapitations, sons of pastors. This is a real ongoing issue. Rather than sit idly by, churches must creatively engage in this transformative process by providing real skills and increased leadership opportunities within and beyond the 4 walls of the church. Rap demonstrates that interconnectedness across time, space, and culture and language, it can happen. Perhaps a fluid identity is not as new as it appears. Paul clearly references multiple belongings as a means of reaching people for the kingdom in 1 Corinthians 9. Is it possible that the Missio Dei is more globalized than we realize? I believe so. We are all pilgrims, searching for Imago Dei, and as we travel along the way, we can welcome, walk with, learn from, and co-create together. Amen.
Miete shenido, miete shenido.